Okay, well, here we are again. It's Saturday night here in Melbourne, Australia, and welcome to another SENCE Podcast. Riki will be joining us a bit later on once we get through the bulk of our content. And I wanted to start tonight by looking at where we all are in the general framework of the energy and the flow of it right now. So today is the 30th of November, which is the 30 and the 11. The 3 and the 11 in 2019 is 14. 14 plus the 2 and the 1 and the 9 equals 26. The 2 and the 6 is 8. So it is the magical numerology of the infinity symbol that is 8. And this is important in the sense that right now we're arriving at what's known as the 8th destiny point in the asteroid Juno, which is being reflected in the destiny point of 8 in Libra, and exactly the same destiny point in Aries, which is, of course, opposing to Mars. And this is really, really significant because when we have dates that literally correlate to the exact energy of what's taking place across the expanse of the cosmos, we need to take notice of it. So, to put it simply, we need to be careful of what walls we put up before we actually see what walls we've put up for ourselves. So Venus in conjunction to the South Node is very much away in a rapid rate connecting with Jupiter. And this signals in a sort of a classic matrix style which pill you're going to choose, the red pill or the blue pill. So how far do you want to go down this rabbit hole? Well, both have their own deceptions, but one is particularly aligned to the Capricorn energy, and this is the energy that is currently holding everyone back and keeping us all very much in the delusion. The delusion is of the blue pill, where Neptune is direct, and it's signaling that most of us are blocking our destiny due to insecurities because we've got distorted emotions which manifest as emotional trauma. And that's what predominantly keeps you, me, and everyone else trapped in the lower vibration, which will be further intensified by the upcoming Saturn and Pluto conjunction in 2020. So to put it mildly for everyone listening, it's an absolute motherfucker. It is a really, really full-on challenging energy. And we've got Mars and the Sun and the South Node all trining together while the Moon comes into Aquarius and squares to Uranus while also connecting to Chiron. So these are ridiculously benefic, highly exalted planetary energies that our psyche, as you know, in the human condition, is transiting through. But what it all really means in the most simplest explanation we can muster is that it's all about expanding your emotional state while recognizing the karma that's predominantly playing out in your third-party interactions and your relationships. So what does it all kind of correlate to when you break it down? Well, this next recorded audio I did when I was pretty much doing a cleansing and clearing ceremony in the bath 48 hours ago, after listening to more of a further insight from Guy Lozia, who felt compelled to send me more audio as to what is happening with the wide timeline that we're all breaking away with. And at the end of the day, we've got a situation now where we're realizing just how much clarity is coming through once we go through this rather confused and somewhat dizzy state. We're all in a sort of a state of like a primordial ooze, a mist that's clouding our judgment and making us somewhat reactionary in a lot of ways to any given situation in our normal everyday lives. So this audio that I'm about to play, in which Riki will then ultimately add his particular ideal as well, is going to give you a deeper insight into how this all correlates in the grand scheme of what's coming up and where we all stand in the scheme of things right now. So I hope you enjoy this particular audio.
It's a very powerful, very complex scenarios have been downloaded over the course of the full moon in Sagittarius, new moon in Sagittarius, I should say, and the fact that Neptune has gone direct. This is a response predominantly to a very empowered feeling of mystic confusion. In answer to Mark's very powerful connectivity to a higher level of deeper density, definitely a sixth density expression. The human genome is now integrating things that I've been talking about for quite a time. It's just the removal, the conscious removal of us needing to feel defined in any given circumstance, in any given situation, in any given incarnation, so that our self-expression stems from the language of the mind. Everything within the mind is predominantly compartmentalized, and therefore it is influenced by certain factors that relate directly to our time-shifted circumstance, and most importantly, the environment we find ourselves in. The underlying theme for this is to understand that energy follows attention, and energy follows intention. So many of us who I've been speaking to have definitely broken away from the duality framework that is the old timeline, the old paradigm of feeling as if displacement is part of their inner journey to find self-authorization, and the reflecting energy through the mirror of expression is already pre-orchestrated and therefore pre-arranged. This is what an assimilation is. It's a program written that runs when certain subconscious triggers come into play. Now, understanding that context, the language of the mind is essentially embodied in what is known as focused consciousness, which is predominantly grounded by exploration and experience. This is erroneous expression. This is wrongful expression. It's part of us integrating the experiential nature of living a time-bound linear earth experience, but it's not what we are, and it's not why we are here. Moving past that language of the mind, the compartmentalized layers of deception that keeps us separated from our subconscious, which then keeps us separated from our superconscious, which then keeps separated from our infinite conscious, is essentially the transcendent journey that the ascended masters and those that hold mastery within a higher octave of light-body interaction, which is embodied within a framework or an understanding of spirituality. Spirituality is changing. Spirituality is no longer bordered by set rules and or dogmatic principles that make it, like anything, somewhat subservient to one circumstance. Now, I was told quite clearly that moving away to the wide timeline, which is manifesting in a new language of unity, which is embodied in our desire to be transparent. The currency of conscious exchange has become transparency. Now, don't get me wrong, that doesn't mean that we don't continue to lie. It doesn't mean we don't continue to unintentionally deceive and justify to ourselves that we're trying not to upset or imbalance a given situation. But we're still looking through the mirror and drawing an edge against ourselves. Because as it was clearly stated, this sense of misty confusion, this clouding of judgment, and not judgment of others, but judgment of your own personal situation. You may feel like I do at the moment, which I believe was further amplified by the planet of secrets, Neptune, lifting its veil of amnesia over a large expanse of the population in the last 24 hours. This coupled with the new moon in Sagittarius, and Sagittarius allows us to work out a defined order of further coming into a greater connectivity with our higher sensory perception of things. But I felt like there are 1,000 thoughts trying to manifest into form that are all somewhat interconnected with the next level of action that I want to actually express. Sorry, my apologies. We're trying to get through, which is the Kali Yuga, which is the 3D Maya, the 3D drama, always endeavoring to try to get through and upset the balance of this new level of conscious expansion and transparent language that I'm trying to convey with all those that I come in contact with and all those that I interact with in the core expansion of my life. But rather than fall into the predictable trap that the 3D and its very intricate and very complex programming ideals generate, the mind circuit is breaking down. And the cells that are conversing with each other are helping to support that process of breaking down the compartmentalized nature of our mind and our thought process. So for the first time, within this cloudy sense of confused reality, we see more clearly through the Maya into our heightened and more sensitive perception of the future. I know exactly what is happening today and tomorrow, next week, and into months ahead. I understand that the universe is appreciating the transition that my psyche is making and drawing into a conscious focus. In other words, my conscious focus is no longer part of a program to trigger certain actions. You speak it how it is, you act it how it is. You are how it is. It is the isness of any given moment that you surrender and release yourself to. Now I have to agree with Mark when he states that had we have not been able to split this timeline and allow many of the higher and more consciously aware souls move away from the predetermined expression of the future, we would have been befallen with a war, a third world war, a more comprehensively sanctioned war through, bodies that we have all come to know and trust, like the United Nations. The United Nations is a very distorted mirror through which the elitists continue to generate and balance power. Yet many of us are very, very aware of the fugazi, the falsehood, the fake mask that organisations like this have a certain controlling influence over. Now, I'm not geopolitically orientated. Suffice to say that this is still remnants of an old paradigm that is built on vertical integration of everything that builds into a platform for its self-expression. It's a self-aware platform that echoes its very, very own set of rules, its dogmatic principles, the principles by which centralized and institutionalized elements operate from. Now, part and parcel of this mistiness, this confusion, and all these thoughts bombarding the construct at any one time is to feel somewhat displaced. I don't know whether I want to go left. I don't know if I want to go right. I don't know if I want to open that book. I don't know if I want to text that person. I don't know if I want to go to that website. I don't know if I just want to get back under the covers and sleep. There are so many things that are trying to recalibrate within the thought construct so that you start to not only see a more sensitive outlook, but experience it in the physical. Be the embodiment of what you see through your seventh sense. The seventh sense, although difficult to define for most, is simply no longer having the same trigger impulses to generate action in a predictable and or habituated format. It allows you to move past that stifled sense of self-expression and into this new understanding of interconnectedness. And you, the individual, the only being expressing itself within the assimilation in the hologram, have the ability to rewrite the way you program your own self and therefore your own life and therefore your own destiny. Now, this is really kind of scientifically based in consciously allowing every thought to arrive within the framework or the expanse of the heart space, not the head. Moving outside of the head and being more grounded in the heart is the way to deregulate, decompartmentalize the way that thought is collapsed into form. We're redefining from a science point of view the collapsing of the wave function on a more consistent basis as opposed to manifesting the solidified nature of the particle. Therefore, we return to a much more expansive and or etheric state. To operate in the astral is like living and exposing light between two worlds, two levels of density in which the core focus is one of transcendence. Transcendence embodies the cathartic journey of the aha moments we're all feeling. And don't tell me you're not feeling them. You are feeling them. You may not necessarily be consciously expressing them, but you're still feeling them. Even even if it's still part of a suppressed framework of denial, which is very much embodied in distorted emotional output. And this leads me to going back to certain things that have already come to pass in the way that consciousness has forever been expansive and evolving. The prism that is the Rubik's Cube is represented as a compartmentalized, rigid and or regimented form of the human brain or mind circuit. Each side of the Rubik's Cube represents an emotional state. When the beams of light, that is the balance, the dichotomy between the light body and the darker shadow body, the darker shadow self, are in alignment, the comprehensive color coordination is uniform. A completed Rubik's Cube has a yellow, a red, a blue, a white, a black, and a yellow side. Yet when every new circumstance arrives and is not met by the heart, but met by the mind, and the language of the mind interprets that, those colors become dissipated. There is a dissonance in the vibrational frequency of how the tuned moment is being distorted. So we need to become mindfully aware that we, as infinite offspring of the infinite being, have the inherent capability as our creator to always keep that color spectrum in balance. Replacing the emotional states that the human condition is currently expressing at very high distorted frequencies are anger, frustration, jealousy, envy, manipulation, judgment. They'll do. To replace them now with the language of unity and this transparent current, all being drawn into expressing through our daily interaction with others, is to recognize first and foremost the gratitude, our worthiness to express gratitude, our valor and courage to feel confident and strong enough with compassionate strength at our core to express the gratitude and the worthiness of the gift it creates. Alignment, aligning to our true purpose. Illumination, seeing the light above the darkness, which is dissipating more and more because it integrates as part of the toned down version of self. We are amalgamating our cellular memory and structure with these new, more purified, enlivened and enlightened cells. This is creating our new light body. This is downloading a new level of higher consciousness. Consciousness that is predominantly founded in unity, our oneness to be one with all things in existence, or what we like to refer to at the seventh sense as the Totia, the one that is all that is one. That principle alone allows us to co-create with the universe in divine harmony. So let it be said that transparency leads to a higher harmonic resonance that is embodied in the language of the mind as harmony. Harmony. And this is why I believe musicians and those that are drawn to the higher octaves of art and creativity are more aligned in tune, if you like, as third wavers on the planet to set these new parameters, these new transparent receptors into motion. This forms the basis of a blissful bubble of experience. Our blissful bubble is contagious because we communicate through a new language of self-expression, which leaves the self very much out in the cold and operates in what is known as the we are expression principle. Try to imagine a conversation with someone you care about. Don't mistake that for the distorted expression or emotion of love, but that you care about, to have that conversation removing self from the language. It is difficult, but at the same time attains a higher octave of understanding when expressing yourself in a much more clarified manner. This is where our future is grounding itself. This is allowing us to be truly in our own sovereign power and expressing our truth at the highest level of harmonic resonance in perfect divine flow with our planet. We can work in harmonic unity with Gaia. Gaia will nurture us and we will nurture her, the embodiment of the divine feminine, which is something that most of us need to embrace, but not at the level of the language of the mind in this equality bullshit, but rather to recognize that there is a contribution readily available for all to ultimately receive and experience in the first instance. Moving forward, looking at the way that our biosphere outlook is now something that the millennial generation has very much taken to heart, means that as the impulse comes in, generated by our interpretation of what our visual spectrum and our oral spectrum is hearing and seeing, it then sends that impulse directly to the heart. For many, the heart is also compartmentalized. It is conditional to a greater degree. When the impulse is received at the heart, the wave function collapses to a point where a different outlook, a more discerning outlook that doesn't necessarily involve certain parameters contained within the language of the mind, and it plays out in a seamless and a more engaging manner because it serves a much higher purpose. This is also the trademark visual of transparency. The more that the human condition receives its impulse triggers in the heart space, the more we move out of our need to define ourselves. Definition of circumstance, definition of experience, and definition of a higher and or spiritual outlook is very much part of the language of the mind, and therefore is expressed through a rather distorted filter. So confusion will lead to clarity, but for many it will be the means by which to drag very dark and very deep emotional response triggers to. We will become very reactionary. We will become rather disassociated. We will become rather further fragmented before we will be able to generate that unison conscious understanding that we have this ability to change our stars, to rewrite our future. And that is essentially what the next phase, what the next year, 2020, is all about. It will become very loud in your astral field that things are just not right anymore, and I don't need to follow rules of compliance in order to be part of the continuing matrix. The mantra that I've been using for quite some time is I dismantle the matrix and remove myself from the earth grid because I am the tuning fork across the expanse of the hologram. Therefore, the matrix, as I once knew it, no longer exists. It is a fugazi. It is a falsehood. It is a fake being masquerading in an old, outdated paradigm that correlates to nothing that we as a species are expanding into. And every new musician that I meet, and I'm meeting a lot of new musicians, I am noticing that they are speaking in this higher octave of transparency. This language of exchange is not one that embodies self and selfishness and ego and the nurturing and nourishing of the ego space, but rather more about, I know that I'm a higher frequency. I know I operate at a higher octave of light-body interaction. I know that my intentions and my attention draws energy that I can expand into my listeners and my audience. But I'm looking to bring so many more like-minded souls into my tribe before I begin my corroboree, before I begin my foot stomping and my hand clapping and my loud chanting. People need to continue in an effort to transition outside of the language of the mind and into this new transparency embodied by the language of unity to feel somewhat safe and secure. And safe and security define us. If there was one book, and I must say an audio book because I haven't really been across so much for so long, that did resonate quite a few years ago when I really started to grab the so-called bull by the horns and run full force at the glass mirror. The untethered soul speaks essentially of an individual consciousness spinning in the expanse of space. Spinning in the expanse of space to a point where everything falls away and there is no form. And with no form, there is nothing to which to attach to. Form ultimately allows us to feel secure, to attach to something that we believe is going to give us happiness, emotional satisfaction, allow us to transcend to a higher octave of density and or experience. Attachment is recognizing the compartmentalized nature of our mind. And so the question should be asked as we go through this rather misty, dull, confused and hazy state of not knowing which way to turn and which way we should ultimately allow ourselves to be directed to, is defining what that attachment in the physical, in the spiritual, in the mental, in the exploratory and experiential focus that we are all predominantly exposed to. We are exposed to the light, and the light that we believe embodies our moral value, our validity. We need to become consciously aware that to be valid is to attach. And attachment is essentially the distorted cord that we then allow ourselves to be influenced and or impacted upon by karma. Now, one thing I've learned recently, which was very, very empowering, was in my deeper understanding and love of astrology, because the planets now bear great witness to this expansive shift that's happening within the culture, the biosphere that is Earth, is that the node, the south node, is very, very much representative of karma from the past that we drag along from incarnation to incarnation and embed as trapped trauma that essentially fuels our distorted emotional expression. While the north node is essentially drawing us further and further to the future karma that is predominantly waiting for us. That we are drawing in as a conscious event stream because energy follows attention. Energy follows intention. If we are intending to try to rise above our misfortunes, our misgivings, our emotional distortions, and our inadequacies, ineptitude, which are all elementals of the language of the mind, then our energy will help us to do so by dissolving that attachment to those pre-existing and or conditioned platforms. But if we allow ourselves to fall deeper and deeper into the maya, deeper and deeper into the distorted drama of third-party interaction, then our energy will follow that attention and therefore draw more and more of that from the etheric field into the astral space. And from the astral space, we'll draw it back down into our illusory planar reality. This clarity only comes from being immersed in a bed of crystalline energy, embodied with solar light codes of truth and purity and essence in a body of water. A conscious cleansing and clearing of all the toxicity that the spacesuit has been immersed in the last 24 hours. So my advice, if I may, is to ask people to find time to go into a quieter space to experience what it is like to be in the void and calm the alpha waves, the beta and the theta expressions, the frequencies by being in a body of water, and a bath of magnesium-soaked water is a perfect way to generate that pure peace and tranquility. There's also a certain urgency that's coming through that needs to talk a little bit more about ancestral connectivity and ancestral shifts. I was speaking to a very enlightened musician yesterday, someone very new who I'd met on FaceShip, and ultimately allowed me the opportunity to speak from my heart in the language of unity. And the request that I made was, now that I have left Cornwall, Newcastle, New South Wales, where I was doing strong ceremonial work with the Indigenous cultures, is I am in Melbourne and I would like to connect with some tribes here. And this particular individual was in a position to educate me as to the opportunity to do exactly that. And this led me to express a certain level of ancestral wisdom that I'd received from a number of senior lawmen and a few of the still existing elders, that we are now approaching what is known as the tipping of the third and fourth bowl. This is alluding to the eventuality of the sixth extinction that is befalling us through carbon emission and climate change. Now, I'm not going to get on my soapbox about this. Suffice to say that for those light workers that are truly empowered and accelerated in integrating this new knowledge and therefore to express this new wisdom, I'm urging you to connect with your ancient ancestors and to do as much grounded ceremony as you possibly can in order to anchor this new transparency on the earth, to anchor this new non-violent and clarified language of unity, allowing that to be the water that you draw into your cellular memory to purify your new sense of self-expression. And I think that is a really, really positive and powerful outlook for humanity to look forward to. Thanks for allowing me to share that with all of you. I hope that the confusion dissipates very soon and that you all end up embodying this powerful new transition that expresses your light body in a whole new way.
You know, so it's like stuff done to the mind to make you see stuff the way your shadow fears it. So it's almost like something resonant with our own shadow, you know, that overlaps our own shadow self, you know, our own doppelganger shadow, you know, that those who are on this mission, you know, and I definitely sense the female again. The female is like a Bellatrix. I can tell you about her at some point, you know. So the thing is also is that this is another interesting thing. Like as a child, a lot of us who sense like spirit or AI or whatever other energy around, sometimes we do actually disown our true shadow self because we know there's something even darker around, so we cut that off. Does that make sense? So, you know, if I sense that, say I have a feeling in me of like, I don't know, like manipulation, for instance. I have a feeling of wanting to manipulate as a child, but there's a darker energy around me, a being who is extremely manipulative, and I feel uncomfortable with that being, because a lot of us do see them as children. Then we will cut off our own manipulative side because we don't like being like that darkness, you know, so we actually cut off our own true shadow self because there's someone else around, or even a real person or an entity or whatever, who is actually embodying that darkness so badly that it makes us scared to be like that, you know. Same with our parents, or if our parents be like that, you know. So it's quite interesting, really, because this is why I stay open to the idea, you know, with the external influence. But I also really need to listen to my doppelganger thing and really get that into me and clear and really discern, you know, where is my shadow playing up something, you know. But I do know that they work with our own shadow and our own traumas, you know, and that's part of what I need to do, is be very, very clear on that and understand and see when people are being worked on. Because obviously, as you know, I do see other entities, especially around humans who have addictions, you know, and alcohol and that. So what you did to break yourself free lifted you, Mike, out of the astral soup where other entities are at, and put you more into only having your own shadow to deal with. And that's what happens when we cleanse our system. You know, our own shadow comes up rather than, you know, like feeling a bit of our own anger and then this other shit coming in that isn't ours, which is like resonant frequency. So it's like if there are other energies around, or even energy in a house or the area that we're in that resonates with something that we feel, we can take that energy on and believe that that's ours. It's processed when it isn't. But we embody and we channel like energy, because like attracts like. So we channel energy which is like our own suppressed shit. So the whole topic's really interesting, you know, and this is worth talking about at some point. But anyway, I'll listen to the rest of your audio now. Yeah, I think that's really cool, yeah. Online community, you know, community sort of thing. I think that's really, really good. And we're all bringing stuff to the table. I mean, like literally, Mike, like, you know, when I was with Casey, you know, like, and I knew what I knew about how mental, insane our planet is and the way people are, the truest thing I ever felt was that I need to have a place that's off grid, where it's away from the bullshit, you know, where we bring scientists, you know, all kinds of people together. I'm trying to navigate the streets while I audio, but, you know, so we bring all these people together, and as a body together, you know, and it's not necessarily an organisation, but whatever we are will happen over time. But collectively, the power of what we're bringing is fucking massive, because, you know the way it works. Everyone wants a bit of stuff for themselves. You know, they all want the popularity. They all want, it's my blog, it's my thing, it's my this. But through this collective thing, it's very powerful, you know. And I think also the thing to realise is that, you know, like, it doesn't matter how many people, like you said, you know, are engaged with what we're doing. It doesn't matter how many people, because it's the right people, you know, and that's the trust in what we're doing. And that's why I'm not bothered about when I put stuff up, like there's only, you know, like 2 views, you know. I mean, fuck it, it's work in progress, you know. It's, yeah, so I'm hearing you. I'm just going to the supermarket now. I think the other thing I'm really getting is that, you know, I'm feeling the soul connection between us and, you know, all of this that's been happening, you know, and it's like I feel shivers with it, you know. So this is fucking deep. Like, you know, we wouldn't have stuck together all this time, you know, talking to each other. You know, I was willing to listen to you back when, you know, and I was willing to stay with this, you know. And we've stayed with this for a reason, because we are on a higher mission, you know. And the clarity that you're speaking with, you know, and the way you know your subjects, you know, it's fucking powerful. You know, people don't have that kind of conviction, you know, to wake up like you do and like I do. I mean, look at what I'm fucking doing, man. You know, like, I'm challenging my flipping life in a way that I never imagined I could be doing, you know. Like, I was depressed, fucking just smoking weed, and, you know, for fuck's sake, you know, don't go back to doing that and alcohol, man. No, maybe once in a while. Seriously, like, you have come on so fucking much since you stopped smoking and that. You know, when you did that, you said to the universe, like, you know, I am willing to do this. And this is what I always say: if you stop addictions, you know, you are literally saying to the universe, I am ready. You know, when you stop addictions, because you're talking about habitual patterns, like we were talking about breaking those patterns. And when you do that, you are saying, you know, like I say in my audio podcast, like, you are being willing. You're showing the universe, I am ready, and I will break any of these patterns, you know, for truth, because I believe in truth, you know, and stuff. My head's saying about destiny, you know. So that's related to all this, aligning ourselves with our destiny. And I get excited, so it's important, and we do have work to do together, and this is becoming big, as I know, like it really is. And, what we're doing is becoming bigger, and it's bigger than us, and it's always been bigger than us. We are on a mission here with this, and, people are going to be coming in to the fold. Some might come and go still, but to have a core team of people who really care about all this, it's really fucking powerful. And, it's inspiring me to keep at it. And when I heard your audio, it's exactly what I flipping need, So me on my own isn't enough, it's not enough to stay conscious, it really isn't, especially around a world that's completely unconscious. Because when you step into that unconscious world, when you go into a city, you are embedded, you are putting your aura, your energy field into energy which is unconsciousness, so you're actually infiltrating your own energy field with more unconsciousness. Even all the sounds and the noises and all that shit, it's not a healthy world. So our tribe fucking matters, it really matters, because it just does, and, we all reflect truth back at each other, And when I started breathing, when I was listening to podcasts, I knew in that moment that is something powerful, because when I deep breathe, that is me being in my power, When I deep breathe, that is me overriding the control mechanisms, because I do believe there are, other than fight, flight and trauma, which stops the breathing being deep, I do feel there's an AI control agenda on the earth to stop people's breath being deep, because the deep breath brings prana and energy, so that's one of the control programs, And when I deep breathe, it's almost like the talk that you were doing, and then, with Mark, and just before that, the stuff you were saying was almost like an inspiration to my spirit, which was giving me that energy to go, right, do this, deep breathe, So it's really, really powerful stuff. And yeah, when I deep breathe, I know I'm aligned, basically. I think it's also very important for the general population to be realising that we are in this together. It's through the power together. We do have the power, which is breaking thousands of years of, we don't have the power and we're under the rule of whatever, So that's really a massive paradigm shift, And I think, that's what I'm here to do with the music, I feel like I can hit, not just spiritual community, but I can hit beyond that community with frontman, music stuff, I believe that I can go beyond that, and it's through one, the way things are said, but it's also the frequency of when I'm singing and what's coming through. People recognise it beyond the words, they feel it, they know what I'm saying, you know what I mean? They know what I'm saying, even if they're consciously not actually at that level yet. You see, so that's what we're doing with the music. We can touch beyond, the veil of amnesia and illusions in people. So for fuck's sake, music's that powerful. So you put bits of the truth that you're aware of. You put that in the music. In the lyrics and stuff. And I feel that's what I'm here to do at the moment. You put that in there. You're talking about a movement. We've got not just powerful music. We've not just got good music. We've not just got good lyrics, but we have a whole philosophy, a whole way behind it. We have a whole meaning, a whole depth. It's more than music. It's a whole way of life. And I do feel like if we keep on like this, something big's going to happen. I know I seem behind in some ways, but it's not. It's just survival and stuff, Although even with that, I've started getting in a rhythm with it. As you know, I've started to become a little bit more available recently and managing to get power on my phone. I'm managing to get the money and do that, get more stable, get enough sleep. So I'm managing to actually keep myself afloat, in a situation that's really flipping. Would be hard for a lot of people, so we are moving forward, but I feel like this group thing, you know. And this is what's really cool about this is isn't just group consciousness, is in like, oh, you know, fluffy, you know, sort of all one love man sort of consciousness, but actually real stuff, you know, it's real energy, it's real change, it's real, you know, we're really engaged with this stuff, you know, so it's powerful. This matters, you know, because we're living on a planet with ancient memory and ancient knowing, and I feel like that is my most important focus, you know, because the time that we are being caught into on this planet, we're being very caught into only now, so people don't perceive outside of this time. I mean, I know now is important now, but it's not the point. It's like there's an eternal now, which is the eternal oneness of life, you know. It's like Earth being an ancient planet, you know, with deep wisdom, you know, and like that is like absolutely 100% exactly what I need to be tapping into, you know, that deep understanding that goes back. It's almost like we could be stood here and your whole perception is completely different about this reality, you know, and you see the depth, and you tap into that ancient wisdom, obviously. And I really do feel like that matters, Mike, because, you know, obviously what you've been learning, and so have I, is like bringing, is gaining momentum now. You know, it's almost like a tumbleweed that started moving. Once that tumbleweed started moving, other people are like, whoa, the tumbleweed's moving. You know, it's like it's got a momentum of itself. And it's sort of an unstoppable in a way, you know, it's like unstoppable energy of movement of truth that will bring other people in and become a movement within itself, you know. And I mean, there is a movement going on for awakening on the planet, but and healing on the planet, and there's a movement for obviously cleaning up the planet. But one, for me, I know I need to be tapping into the ancient wisdom, bring that forward to help people see that beauty and realize, oh my God, this earth has a record of everything and it's extremely beautiful. But
so I think we're going to just like leave it at that particular point, because that's a good segue for us to get into a conversation here with Riki, and can kind of like elaborate a lot more on what we were talking about, which is, you know, recognizing this ancient wisdom because we're ready and we're clear enough within the framework of who we are and our understanding of who we are to be able to now organize that, compartmentalize that, define that within. So let's get into that with Riki now.
All right.
Hey, Riki, can you hear me?
I can hear you. I've got a headset on, so I'm wondering how clear this is.
Can you hear me, mate?
I can, yeah.
These technical problems that these podcasts have can be quite debilitating at times. But anyway, let's see.
Have you got me there?
What we can do here. Can you hear me? Riki, can you hear?
Yes, I can, yeah.
Well, I'm connected, but I can't hear you.
Okay.
So I'm wondering what that's all about.
How about now?
Maybe I have to call in on the phone, mate. We seem to have trouble trying to connect with the online callers. As soon as we give them the direct connection, they're not able to get through. I'm just going to try one more thing, so just bear with us. You know, quite a lot of us online tonight, which is really, really great. So hold on a second. It's not picking up my voice. Hang on, mate. Just hold on. We'll try something else. I'll try a different audio interface. All right. Let's see if this has a better result. Okay. Can you ring in again? Ring in again. Let's try that again. All right. Let's see if we can get this to work now. All right, so you're ringing. Riki, can you hear me?
Hello.
Riki, can you hear me? Can you hear me, bro?
Hello.
Yes?
Hello?
No? I can hear you, but you can't hear, but we can't hear you.
Okay, right.
Yeah, it's not picking up the voice. It's got me. You can hear me. Everybody can hear me, but no. All right, well, let's do the phone thing again, Rick. Yep. If anybody wants to call in, my number is 6143415555. Best to call on WhatsApp. All right, Riki, you should be able to hear it.
Hey.
Hey, how we doing?
Oh, that's good. Yeah, I mean, this works. It's just as a silly feedback loop where I end up hearing myself back with a sort of 50-second delay or something. But I'll just try and ignore my own voice back at me.
Yeah, well, what's weird is that the software, which is a subscribed, paid for software, actually prides itself on guests and call-ins having obviously not the case. So, we're going to have to.
Yeah. I mean, it's very possible that the microphone has gone in my headphones, but never mind. I'll have to buy some more for the next one.
All right, no problem. So I'm going to throw it over to you because I didn't mean to cut you short, because I thought what you were saying was really important, because you were recognizing something that had really, really kind of welled up and really clarified in your own life, that there was a lot that was making sense to you, but you were drawing it from a much, much older and a more ancient ancestral timeline, right?
That's right. Yeah.
So if you want to elaborate on that, and how you believe ultimately that everything that we have on our planet, particularly our reconnection to nature and understanding that, it's all part of a larger infused, experiential situation that we're going through.
Because I think basically the issue is at the moment we've been so caught in the current time that we're so distracted by everything, as we know. That can't be denied, that humans are distracted by the media, by blah blah blah, whatever. And yet underneath, especially when we go out into nature, we see and we feel and we sense that there's something much more profound and deeper going on. And right now I just want to say it's my understanding that we didn't just come to Earth for no reason, originally. Yeah. In other words, that there is a grand beauty and a grand reason and understanding behind all that is and all that's being experienced, through the generations. And I think that, what I was saying that other night, which was very fragmented to you, because I was all excited, Mike, and I was saying, wow, I can almost tap into the memory of our ancient, our ancient civilizations, blah, 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 and all that.
Yeah, man.
And, that's there. And I think that should be readily available. In other words, memory is just sort of like localized to the mind and that, but really all is connected, and we should have access to all time and all memory. And within that space, we can draw upon, for instance, experience from past lives, or, receive a memory and understanding from the earth herself that can guide and help us now. So I guess the point is that we're living in the 1%, just like we see within our own minds. Scientists saying, within our own minds, we only actually access a certain section of our mind. And the same thing is going on a bigger level. And this is the whole thing with the, fractal nature of reality. We see patterns within the universe.
Yep.
And then those same patterns are then within our body. and then those same patterns are within the cells, so, and that makes me smile saying that. That's the smile of my soul, the smile of the beauty,
Yep.
Of it all. So I guess when we truly trust our heart, we realize that there is a grander purpose, there is a grander reason, and that let's keep on this path, let's keep doing what nurtures our soul, because we're changing our timelines, we are forging a new destiny for humanity with each action, and that's the type of responsibility we need here and now on the planet, to realize that, hang on, these decisions that I'm making here and now, although it appears like it's only me, making a change, in other words, like it might be only a few of us who are cleaning up the litter, for instance, but
yep.
we don't realize the significance of that change, because that person might make that change, and then that inspires 100 other people to make that change, so this whole idea that we're insignificant and these outdated understandings and ideas, that some come from the Victorian times or some come from times before that, like the war time, in which things were very difficult. And the point is that not only do we have something positive to bring in from this past time and from timelessness itself, which is it's a truth beyond this illusory reality, illusory reality,
illusory reality.
But the understanding I have had is that, for instance, I was saying about when I go back to England, because I've been traveling, I can still feel the energy of the war, World War I and II, and that people are still embodying trauma and experience from that, which is holding them back. The ideas, the understanding, the actual suppressed collective trauma, So in other words, the point is that there's a deeper understanding that there is experience that goes back, that when dealt with, that when brought healing, resolution, just like within our own traumas within inside ourselves, on a deeper level, when these experiences are cleansed from the earth and cleansed from maybe eons ago, we change the present time now. We change the timelines now. So really, we are understanding here how powerful we are as creators in this on this beautiful planet right now. Through our choices, but through also healing experiences in the past timelines, ancient timeline experience.
The great thing about what you're saying there is that it's really attributed to lifting the veil of amnesia. And the lifting of the veil of amnesia for most in the human kind of genome, in the larger expanse of the human condition, is really the journey that we're all going on from the north node to the south node of the moon. And basically, as I said at the beginning of the broadcast, we're being confronted as we arrive at these, what we call these tipping points, or these particular convergence points, is we're being asked, do you want to take the blue pill? Do you want to take the red pill? If you take the blue pill, there's going to be an even more deceptive experience in dealing with your own insecurities. Those insecurities, because you don't want to deal with them, because you try to kind of sweep them aside, they become even more distorted, even more fragmented, which then manifest in your life as emotional trauma, right? And the closer you get to these two nodes coming together at this particular convergence, what they call the galactic center in astrology, it's an absolutely kind of cathartic aha moment. It's like, wow, wait a minute. I feel as if something's lifting here, and that things are becoming much clearer to me, and I'm not being beholden to the same behaviors that I once was very, very quick to trigger into. And I think where people are now realizing, just finish that particular point, where people are now realizing is that it's their choice. The planets and the planetary transits and the breaking of the timelines into the wide timeline for those that are more, accelerated and energetically, aligned to their true power, is being able to deal with your insecurities without attaching too much emotional output to it. And the ancients understood that too. That's why they were very, very closely aligned to grounding to, you know, Mother Earth, and grounding to their, you know, their principles working with nature. And people need to understand that they're never going to be able to come out the other end of the illusion if they can't face their own insecurities, and therefore dispel the myth around their own emotional trauma. Now, you know a lot about that sort of thing, so perhaps you'd care to elaborate.
Yeah, you mean about emotional trauma?
Well, yeah, you know, we all have it, man.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. Well, that's it, yeah. And, you know, you can easily get, what's the word, swept off your feet, I suppose, going into your psyche like that. But the reason I think is because there is perhaps, you know, in the ancient timelines where our DNA was manipulated, which I feel is just maybe my personal opinion, but a lot of people seem to feel that, you know, that certain to the body and the energy system in order to manipulate emotion, you know. So I guess we've not been able to work with emotion in a way which doesn't knock us off our feet, you know. And for a lot of people, as soon as they start going in there, it's like they become the emotion, you know, they become the trauma, and they live it out, you know. And this is part of the agenda on the planet, has been to suppress trauma and experience, so that that experience is then used against us. So in other words, our own shadow, when unresolved, is being used against us, and that is being used by the, you know, obviously the corporations and all the big guys on the planet who know what they're doing to manipulate and use us. If you've dealt with your shadow, if you have come to a place of peace within yourself, obviously you can't be used etherically as an energy source, or on the physical plane in the 3D by these corporations, you know, to be addicted to substances, to TV, to violence, to all these things. So, you know, the trick is to be able to become empowered and be centered, like the center of the, you know, the galaxy, which is what I was realizing the other day when I was doing deep breathing and all that. Come from an empowered place, then allow, if needed, emotions and experience, maybe even ancestral experience beyond this life, you know, to come up, well up, move through and out. So we're not attaching to the story or the experience, you know. Yes, it's good to express a story, to know what the story is, but realize I am not that story. Of course, that story has affected my life. And from that sort of a distant perspective, yet transitioning through it as well, you know, allowing it to be, of course, we become more compassionate human beings. Like for me, because I had depression, you know, childhood trauma, just like a lot of people, I was so affected by that, and that was so suppressed and pushed down, which, as I say, has been the agenda on the planet, because traumatized souls, you know, obviously they have addictions, they are easily led, you know, they are not empowered, you know. The trauma easily just fires up and knocks them off balance, you know. But I just wanted to say that in my past, I was depressive, didn't go out, you know, was afraid to go on stage and play my music, all of these things that really held me back, you know. And so through the emotional expression in a healthy way, which was soul guided, you know, the soul, the energy of our truth guides us and wants the truth to be known of these experiences. You know, that is why all this pedophilia stuff's coming out, and, you know, all this transparency and clarity and truth is coming out, which the truth needs to be seen, you know. But through that experience, you know, I can remember tension releasing through the physical body. I can remember shouting at the person who hurt my mum as a child, you know, and getting that actually out of my system. And how after that experience, I felt comfortable with male aggressive guys who were like the person who hurt my mum, you know. So basically it's really good to be free of trauma, because you become a more balanced person and you're no longer being affected by these triggers, you know. And some people say that, you know, artificial intelligence, which works and fires up, you know, these past memories at us, you know, using the emotional body. So what we're talking about here is we do need discernment to know what what is right for us in any moment and what is not, and what's coming from a truer place. Are we buying into a drama, or are we actually progressing here, you know? And that does take time, but we get there, you know. And this is what this is about now. It's about clarity and truth and being honest with ourselves, and as Mark says, transparency, you know, and truth is the currency of the future, you know.
Yeah.
I think anyone who's got their head straight in business realizes now that you've got to be like that. You know, things aren't going to move forward if we're still using the same old paradigm of the lying and, you know, cheating and one-upmanship to try and, you know, it's not sustainable, you know, that way. So
it's not sustainable. And I think that's a really, really good point to make to the audience that's tuned in, that you can't continue to sort of be like a broken record, be in that constant state of recycling when you know that your higher self is trying to tune in to your own higher vibration, because your perception to everything around you becomes much more sensitive, it becomes more heightened, you become more available to everything that's taking place, you see love's liberating light and intention in everything around you, and therefore you make yourself available to contribute. Now, one of the biggest problems we have when we have the North Node and the South Node pretty much working towards, you know, the galactic center and having to go through, you know, transits with benefic planets like Jupiter and Uranus and Mars, is that we also get faced with reliving certain karmic patterns, and karma that we didn't necessarily work with or make an effort to solve or endeavor to come to grips with is going to well up really, really tightly around us, like like the snake of the Kundalini energy, and in an effort to try to drag us into a more distracted and a more deceptive and more separated state of being. So we have to go through that, and that's what the doppelganger and the whole, you know, shadow aspect of self series has been about, to truly transcend any limitations and boundaries we create for ourselves, whether we come from some great ancestral, you know, ancient timeline, or whether we're very, very much part of a more kind of laterally integrated millennial generation in the now, is to understand that our darker self, or our shadow self, is trying to teach us just as much as the higher frequency of our true self.
Indeed, yeah.
It's quite mind-boggling, really, because it's sort of like, well, how does that work? You know, well, as I've said so many times, how does the light know there's light if there's no darkness? And how does the darkness know that it's dark if there's no light? It's a very straightforward, it's a somewhat logical and rational kind of approach to looking at the way that consciousness is forever expansive. It's forever living and breathing and, you know, folding back on itself all the time. I hope that people are, you know, getting more aligned to that ideal and understanding that it's part of their process. Are you seeing that, or are you feeling that yourself?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I mean, experiences, you know, sometimes come up that we keep pushing away, you know, and push away, but it doesn't actually serve. But other times, of course, we're pushing away things because we're in denial, or we don't want to face stuff, and it's understanding that, you know, through this dark night of the soul, and that's having the faith. It's like holding the torch through the dark cave, you know, and knowing. And it's hard to know when you're caught in the delusion, you know, which obviously happens here and there for even the most evolved souls at times, you know, that these so-called dark experiences are there for our evolution, you know, and that's a really beautiful thing, you know. And I guess at the truest point, that things have come out of balance, you know, that's what this is saying, is that any darker shadow aspect or any, you know, unhealthy behavior is calling out help. It's people, you see it in mass culture, you see the mass consumerism. On the surface, it's easy to judge. It's easy to, and with ourselves, it's easy to judge those parts of ourselves. Oh no, like my inner child's being a pleb or something, like, rather than actually being understanding and being like, okay, I'm doing that for a reason, okay, I've turned back to this addiction, which really, holds me back. But what's underneath this, and it's the inquiry of what's underneath this, I always say that maybe this is part of my Gemini thing or what, but when I travel, I always want to know what's over the next hill, but it's that very, wish to understand and to grow. And when you know that the whole journey itself is beautiful itself, and that's what I was seeing recently when I was in a state of sort of, I guess I was in a state of bliss, a state of contentment,
Mm-hmm.
and realizing that, okay, even these most difficult experiences, if, and this is the word, if, because most people don't come through it, well, people do learn, but a lot of humans just stay in a comfort zone in their life, and they don't really evolve to a point where they have made peace with what is. And that's what we're talking about with the shadow. It's about making peace with who we are, all those aspects, like, for instance, a child who never really got what he wanted, and, he wants attention, or he wants more for himself all the time because there's that void that needs filling, So there is this understanding that humanity in itself is out of balance in its current state. And, I do feel it's a collective awakening that's going to really turn things around. How the hell that happens?
Well, it's happening.
No,
it is happening. It's
happening anyway. Yeah, it is happening slowly, isn't it?
It's just not really, I don't think it's really attributed to what we're reading, in the tabloids, what we're reading in people's blogs, what we're reading, or seeing in videos on YouTube and all that. I think people are rather deluded in this whole sort of, oh, look at me, I'm awakening, suddenly I'm completely aligned and tuned in to the harmonic resonance of the planet, and yet I can't wait till I finish this particular discussion so I can rush off to McDonald's and and fill myself up with a whole lot of artificial shit. This weekend warrior element, and I've just got somebody who's messaged me on WhatsApp, said they can't call in, and I do apologize. It's a minister from actually San Francisco, and he's just put a really good question to me and said, at the beginning you were saying that, as per the title, headaches and confusion subside to reveal clarity and compassionate strength. His question is, what do we mean by compassionate strength? Well, I think it's we talked about. You cannot come from the point, what I call an emotional point of unity or unified consciousness, unless you understand what compassionate strength is. I think compassionate strength is recognizing that you're going to stand by someone who is emotionally challenged at the time, no matter what, right? It's all well and good to be convenient because you send someone a text, or you make a phone call, or you put your arm around someone's shoulder to say everything is going to be all right. And then when you're out of that moment, you don't think about them anymore. You do not hold them in high regard. Your energy is not there supporting them. And this is the lack of compassionate strength that people need to show in order to draw their own self-love. You cannot even for a moment consider yourself to be awake and aligned and in tune, and I'm no longer part of the dogmatic principles, and I'm no longer beholden to belief structures and archetypes, unless you can draw on a genuine, authentic level self-love to you. And through that lens of self-love, that is how you can demonstrate compassionate strength. So the short answer to this minister, I will just simply say this. We have to go through traumatic experiences, which I put in a very simple context to feeling headaches or having a kind of a somewhat sort of hazy mist around us where we feel like, well, I want to go this way, but I want to go that way too. And I don't know, you feel so kind of out of balance. You feel really confused. You just don't really feel as if you're very much in control. And that is a huge step in the right direction for all you who are going through that, right? That is a huge step because you are no longer feeling as if your agenda is somewhat attached to some control. Stop trying to feel as if you can control everything that's happening within the, the wider framework of your life. Demonstrate compassionate strength by being there, not only in the moment, but being there always and forever because you genuinely care for that person. And I
talk about authenticity. Really, aren't you?
Always, absolutely, always goes back to it. But people who are still very much wrapped up in the language of the mind, is essentially get to a particular point where they recycle the same feelings and they recycle the same thoughts and they recycle the same reactions that unless they go through the amount of feeling empowered, aligned, and more kind of readily available to take on, the rigors of the 3D. And that's what demonstrating compassionate strength is. And whether you're a Christian or whether you're a Mormon or whether you're a Scientologist or you're a Seventh-day Adventist or a Hindu or whatever, has no correlation, has nothing to do with the fact that we are all in the same reflective mirror together, right? Go.
Tough love, which you can easily think as a guy to guy thing, you challenge each other because that it's going to help you both become strong. And instead of saying the typical things that you think the other person wants to hear, and this is where, you can have compassion for someone, but realize that not to buy too much into their story because you don't want to feed their drama of it, but help them realize that they can take and so we're talking about a love, a stronger kind of love in which you don't always do what you think someone will want you to do, but you do maybe what you sense might help them. So in other words, it's not it's about being comfortable enough to be uncomfortable, to say what you truly feel. And of course, you don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, but they can sense that because when you say things, you say it in a compassionate way, but you say, have you thought about doing such and such? Or, I really sense that, this behavior that you're doing or this addiction, I can really sense is holding you back. So it's very hard to be honest and say what you truly feel. And it's not saying that I'm right. It's just saying that this is what I'm picking up and see what you feel about it. So, it's very hard to do that because you see where people are at and you don't want to hurt them, but they hurt anyway. And it's not, they're already hurt, but the people are already hurt. So we can't safeguard everybody from their feelings, and sometimes being tough and honest, you get to a point with an alcoholic and people get in these relationships where the alcoholic is so being so abusive, and where's the point where you stand up for yourself and say, look, I respect myself enough, I'm not going to accept this behavior, and I'm not being a victim by it, I'm just saying that I respect myself and through that self-love, the other person then respects you as well, and maybe even they see their own behavior. So tough love enables sometimes people to see clearly, maybe even both parties to see clearly, and that is love in itself. So yeah, not always easy.
No, not always easy, and I'm glad that you said it, because I'm getting some more comments now that are coming through, and it's more about expressing a transparent kind of connection in third-party interactions, where you can say to someone, look, hey, don't get me wrong, we've known each other for a while or a little while or whatever, but it's just one of those days where I just don't feel as if we're on the same page, and I don't want you to get all reactive about that, and I don't want you to judge me because you think that I'm being better than you or not. It's just that today or the rest of the week or whatever, we just need to remove ourselves from each other's energy field. And that's
about being authentic and adult, really. That's
you coming from the parental perspective and not being the kind of, the screaming child on the playground, stomping your feet and saying, oh, well, I don't get it. You're coming across as being high and mighty and utilizing, expressions of ego. That's the old paradigm. That's the duality, the compartmentalized nature of looking at the world through a very distorted and filtered lens. We've got to get to a stage now, Riki, where we realize that there's definitely strength in numbers, and it's better to be on same page energetically with like-minded souls, because then authenticity, honesty and transparency can flow like the river of ease and grace. It can be of a divine nature and a divine calling. Then try to be part of a larger, acceptable, circumstance within a societal pool of influence. You're experiencing that in Gibraltar. Why don't you tell those listening, what it was like to literally steam into Gibraltar from somewhere else in Spain, and what you immediately felt?
Yeah, so when I went into I wanted to get out actually straight away. But, I'm from England, and it's very English there, and so that vibration's there. But you can feel more beyond it. It's like on the surface, there's this, selling very expensive perfume, expensive designer outlets. And, so you've got, on the surface, you've got that, but you can feel underneath there's this sort of grating chalk and cheese sort of, energy, and you can feel that the Spanish are, unhappy about about what's happened. Maybe not consciously, but they can feel it should really be our land. So there's a friction there, and I really sense that, and I just sort of wanted to get out. I didn't feel the need to really stand in that energy anymore.
Well, the vibration was wrong for you. The vibration was wrong for you. It created an abrasive sense of, emotional reaction. It's something else that you need to let people know, that if you're standing in a circumstance with another person or a group of people and you just feel uneasy, uncomfortable as a result, then do yourself your biggest favor and remove yourself from the circumstance. That's demonstrating self-love. You don't have to be, expressing or generating, a distorted flow of emotion in some kind of illusory love for someone else if you don't feel it. Why would you do that? I'm noticing quite a few people now sort of stating ultimately that, they're wondering how long it's going to be before this particular web of confusion is going to lift and this greater clarity is coming through. Well,
right.
We've only got, what is it now? It's the 1st of December here in Australia. So we've got literally 20 6 days, or how many days in December? 30?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, well,
this one's 13th
yeah,
November.
I think it's 30. Anyway, and in 30 days, we finished the 2019 year. The 2019 year was all about grounding and preparing ourselves for the true transition, a higher octave of light body integration that will take place during the eclipses. So if we can't find a way to self-love, if we can't find a way to adopt a certain level of authenticity in the way that we deal in the 3D, and we can't do that by the end of the 2019 year when the portal closes, then we're going to have a very, very difficult time transitioning at a time when most people are already going to be elevating to much higher harmonic resonance with the planet in the new year. You know, how do you feel about that sort of thing for yourself?
For me, I feel, there are particular moments and times, obviously, that are conducive to transitions and, of course, planetary alignment and all that really affects us, you know. But yeah, I mean, this is the time to really act like now, and this is the time to really, I think for most humans, to really feel out, what matters in my life, to discern clearly, what kind of paths do I need to go down? Maybe we don't know the exact path we need to go down, but what serves my soul, what doesn't, what can I let go of, all of that, I really feel like at the moment we are collectively trying to open a doorway to a more positive future timeline, so with the changes that are going on the planet, and the sort of, I'm seeing this mad chaos that's going on, there's an even more need to, this is what I really need to say actually, which I realized the other night, was that to center ourselves, to really, if you feel called to, like, deep breathe, meditate more, not always need to be doing or trying to achieve to point, get to point B, because everybody's trying to get to point B all the time, and it's like an obsessive compulsion, to a drive to wake up and do, and it's not, the more we do,
good point,
the more we consume, like we're obsessed. Humanity's obsessed with trying to reach some other point, and it's like, this is the time for coming in and truly realizing, what do we want for our future, for humanity, and how can I align myself with that more positive timeline future. And by doing that, we've got to realize that each little step that we make may seem like little baby steps, but they are forging a new, more harmonic timeline for humanity. And this is a beautiful time. Although it looks like, on one side, shit, like humanity's nosediving and, about to fall off a cliff. It's like,
absolutely,
it all depends on how you feel inside your heart and whether you shut down or don't. Are you going to give up? Are you going to give in to, the negativity and the temptation and not see a beautiful, bright future for humanity? Or are you going to allow yourself to navigate your ship towards, well, your destiny as well, because I do feel like we all have this particular timeline that we can align ourselves with, a vibration in which we are protected. For one, it's almost, we have good luck when we do our gifts, when we bring our gifts, which for me is music, and by doing that, we become a light, and that inspires others, so it's really time for us to realize that no matter what way we are working in the 3D, in this reality, all of us have something really beautiful to contribute, and really at the deepest level, it sounds kind of like, all lovey-dovey, but really, sometimes it's just our being, it's just our smile, it's just, who we actually are, because humanity is beautiful, I really feel that, and that's enough to inspire. A child is enough to inspire,
Absolutely.
So I guess what I was saying anyway is that our heart, and how we feel matters, because I see some of the older generation, who grew up with the ideas of nuclear war and all that, and their heart sort of like sank, and through that heart sinking, sort of there's a giving up, and if you give up, it's like, well, what can you do, because if you think that it's hopeless, then it's kind of hopeless. So
well, because energy follows attention. And so if you think it's hopeless, if that's going to be the expression that you are going to emanate and radiate within the framework of your own cycle of existence, then yes, your energy will follow that, and you'll draw more and more of that to you. And it's not the time for that, as I said at the beginning. We're arriving at the 8th destiny point in the asteroid Juno, which is being reflected at the 8th destiny point in both Libra, and exactly the same destiny point in Aries, which is opposing to Mars. And of course, Aries is always, that's its home planet is Mars, so it's always going to feel exalted and dignified in that state. Now, this tells us that if we don't embrace destiny by looking at everything that is happening to us and how grateful we are to be in the given moment and to be expressive, that we have this ability to recognize that we are the infinite offspring of the infinite being, therefore we are expressions of the highest order that God is, whatever we want to interpret God as, then there's nothing else that we need to concern ourselves with, because the universe is essentially aligning ourselves to that greater pathway and the greater power that will generate once we align to it, and that's why letting those old behaviors go, stop recycling the same habituated patterns, let go of addictions, and be truly available to embrace your destiny, because that's what the asteroid Juno in the journey between the North and the South node are working towards this whole time. And it's all opposing Chiron, which is why we feel so wounded as the wounded healer. And it's, and we've had so many benefic planets that are now all direct, they're all exalted, they're all distinguished. So we need to be very, very much open to how those energies are available to us right now. And you on the road, traveling on a bicycle, over hundreds and hundreds of miles traversing, you're so open to receiving the powerful interactions through these transiting energies. That's what makes you feel blissful ultimately, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I mean, there's less attachment to any, the usual, the usual stuff, the rent and all the typical stuff. And then of course I've got fresh air around me all the time. I've got sunlight during the day, so it's about being more sensory aware, and almost through those being sensory aware rather than dumbed down, the extra sense is coming forward, the discernment sense, the sense that tells you go left, go right, and so there's less confusion, because as we start to simplify our lives and really focus and really know what we need and what we don't need, and it could be anything, it could be like, go and get some water, you need to bloody drink some water. But that in itself, the fact that people don't know what they need in any given moment, is showing, how lost and how disconnected from the, intuition that humanity has become. And I just wanted to say, like, the whole agenda with, like, the food manipulation and all that's gone on has been to desensitize the human from its senses. I know obviously to a big extent senses are illusionary. They're not showing us the true depth of reality.
Yeah, but the seventh sense is completely different to that. Not the typical five senses, but the one that we build as a greater composite of the others. Yes, absolutely. Go on.
I mean, there's spiders and animals and that, and seen where they're drugged or they've eaten whatever, and you see the spider's web is all over, and that's really humanity is in a drugged sort of stupor. You know, we are having to drug ourselves to work, to just do anything, you know.
To maintain,
to maintain, yeah. I mean, and the cleansing that we do inside is it's mirrored in the outside world. In other words, if you don't respect yourself and your body and your world, inner world, how can you know, there's a link between that and the way we treat the earth. You know, we need to be able to respect ourselves and the planet, you know. So the cleansing that's going on is within, you know, and without. So everything mirrors everything else, you know. So there's a very powerful time in regard to all that. But the main thing I will say is it's just about trying to take the power away from corporations that don't have, you know, a higher vision in purpose, and actually either bring our energy back to Mother Earth and what she brings, because obviously that's a deeper energy which goes back thousands of years, which is, you know, more in harmonic resonance with us, or support those corporations which obviously you know, have a higher vision in goal. And this is obviously how we can create a better future by our choices now. So we are powerful creators, you know, co-creators, and that's why I'm positive, because, you know, like the potential we have is unlimited, you know, and to recognize that is really, really powerful.
Absolutely, you know, and I think the fact that we can talk this out, we can present our truth in a manner that isn't being diluted, it's not being strained, it's not being kind of, you know, thought through. We're not trying to attach to anything. We're just speaking from how this new experience on this new earth, in this new parallel reality, on this new consolidated timeline is making us feel.
Yeah, it's beautiful, yeah. Yeah, and I think like that's the realization now, like, let's do this shit. Like, what reality are we going to create, and let's do it. And I think that gradually people will start to realize that, you know, that we are the creators of this new timeline, and it only takes a few to open up. It's like opening up you know, the floodgates of truth, you know, and some of these core concepts that we're trying to bring into our life here and live by are bloody powerful, you know, like being authentic, for one, you know, like when the whole agenda for thousands of years has been to lie, manipulate, you know, to stamp over other people to get your own way due to fear, obviously, because it's fear that makes us act in these behaviors. But total trust in God and source and life is to know that, and this is what I have on the road, you know, like, I've only got £20 left. Oh dear, you know, will I be all right? And then, you know, I go and play some music, and then, you know, someone's put in a 10 euros, another person's, you know, some children have put some money in, some adults have put some money in, whatever. And so you in that way of life, you don't know what's going to happen next. And that's the powerful thing, because you're trusting in life and you don't have the surety of knowing what's going to happen, you know. So I think basically in the future, beyond 2020, you know, like we're moving into a world where, yeah, we trust our intuition more. We are working together more for a higher goal. And we're really, you know, to use a true word, we're getting our shit together, you know, and I'm, as I say, I'm positive about it. There you go.
I think it's a good way to end up. We're getting the bit of the wrap up. Unfortunately, Podbean only allows us to go for approximately just on 2 hours, and we're approaching that. So I want to say thank you for calling in. Thank you for your wisdom. Thank you for your intuition. I think that we've had about just over 35 people that have tuned in during the course of this broadcast, and I'm sure a lot of them are very thankful for everything that you brought to play. And I just want to say to everyone, now that we'll make this a regular thing now. We can see that it's growing. We can see that there's been regulars coming back. And we'll make this a weekly thing on Saturday night, you know, obviously, unless once we start gigging, it'll be different again. But at the moment, we'll make it a Saturday night thing when people seem to be wanting to tune in. And we'll also work out a way where we'll have a Skype hotline or even a WhatsApp hotline for people to be able to call in, because the more people that join this conversation and then take this conversation outside of this one focus broadcast, the more impact we're going to create across the board. And that's really what co-creation is all about. So thank you to all. And we're very, very grateful that you're tuning in. Once again, keep your eye on the 7 Sense Podbean channel. We're also on the Magazine Radio Network now. And, of course, we have the Twin Peaks Mirror also playing once a week on the Podbean Network. So from me, Michael, and from Riki.
Riki, cheers. Cheers.
Riki in Gibraltar, thanks, mate. And we'll catch you again next week.
Brilliant.
All right. Good night.